Today's daf we're going to be learning is Sanhedrin daf Ayin Gimel. We're going to get starting really, we started already, but we're really getting into one of the most basic sugyot of this Masechet, and I would say probably one of the most popular sugyot in this daf and the next daf. We're going to get into Yehareg Val Yavor. Right now we're really dealing with Din Rodef, which we already mentioned somewhat. Now we're going to get into it even more. So the Mishnah starts off, Elu hen shemitzilin otam benafshan. Okay, these first words are really hard to understand. There's a big debate among the commentaries how to read it. I'm going to raise some of the issues. You might walk out a little confused, but I'd rather be honest in saying that there's lack of clarity here rather than try to pretend that it's very simple and easy. Just my personality. So, Elohein shemitzilin otam benafshan. These are people that you can save them with their lives. Okay, now, save them with their lives of who? Is it the same person here? It looks like it's the same subject. On the other hand, they're saving someone with the life of someone else. Usually, like if you think of Din Rodef, what does it mean? It means we're saving a person from someone else who's trying to kill them. So that would be Mitzilin Otan. There's people who are being chased that we're now going to save them with the life of someone else, taking the life of someone else to save them. That would be the obvious way to read it. The problem is that the continuation of the Mishnah doesn't really match because the Mishnah is going to list all these cases where we don't do this, and there's not going to be another person there. It's going to be basically we're going to save someone from doing a sin. And the point is we don't do that. But the fact that they're even raising it must mean that that's somehow connected to this idea, because what would that have to do with rodef at all? So Rashi and Tosfot explain this wording as we're saving the person from sinning. So latzil otam benafsham means we're going to save you from sinning by killing you. It's a very strange concept, right? But we're going to prevent you from killing. Now, it's not so strange because what's going to happen is we're going to prevent you from doing a terrible sin in a case where it affects somebody else. And that's going to be the difference between the first part of the Mishnah and the second part of the Mishnah. The cases where we do it is when there's someone else being affected by it. So it's not like we're ignoring the person that we're saving, right? But it's not like we're saving someone from their pursuer. That would be one commentary, and that is one approach, that we're saving someone from their pursuer. But what it means is we're going to save someone from sinning, from doing a terrible sin, when there's someone else who's actually getting hurt in the process. Okay? So again, different interpretations, because some do think that it's definitely just has to do with pursuer and the person being pursued, and we're going to kill the pursuer, to save the person being pursued. So who are the people who mitzilin otam benafshan? Harodef achar chavero lahorgo. Okay. By the way, I'm just going to point out that I mentioned these two ways of reading it, and each one has difficulties in the text here. Okay, that's why there's no perfect answer. So these are the people who you can. Harodef achar chavero lahorgo. If someone's chasing someone to kill them, then you can kill them. We're going to see later that it seems like, and we talked about this previously, that your job kind of functions when you see someone doing this and you kill them. You're really functioning like the court. And it's if you're a messenger of the court. Now you're not, but the problem is you can't bring this person to court because they're in the middle of about to kill someone. You can't just say, stop, we have to go to court, okay? And the truth is you end up, a court can only punish when someone's done it, and you're doing this before they do it. But yet it's going to be viewed in the sugya, as we're going to see, and not clear everybody agrees with this, but certainly some things we're going to see in the sugya seem to look this way, that you're really functioning like a person of the court, like a messenger of the court, and instituting a punishment. Because we're going to see this punishment terminology here of onesh, punishment. So who can do this? Rodef go or achar zachar. If someone's going to rape, a man is raping another man, or achar naram or asa, or a betrothed woman. Okay, what about a woman who's not betrothed? What about a woman who's married? Okay, so all those things are going to come under other categories, and they're going to be included in this, but they use the example of naram or asa because the Torah really explains the case of naram or asa and talks about the rape of an naram or asa. She's the center, like the central case. But yes, it would be applicable. Now, it's not all rape because it would have to be rape that if the man is to have relations with her, it's a chiyuv karet. Okay, you get punished either by karet or by death by the court. We'll get to that soon. We'll see a bright that expands a little bit on our Mishnah, but that's topic in and of itself, but we're going to stay with what it says here. Okay, now we're getting to the second category. So basically we have someone who's about to rape another person or kill another person, whether they're raping a male or a female. Okay, but again, it would have to be someone who it's in Yisur Karet to have relations with her. we're going to be able to kill that person to prevent the action from happening. But rodef, someone's trying to chase after an animal to engage in relations with the animal, or Shabbat, or they're trying to desecrate Shabbos, or they're or they want to worship idols. Here, the only way to explain would be we don't stop them from sinning. Okay? We don't say, oh, we want to prevent you from doing this horrible sin, because there's no effect on anybody else. Now, you might say, why is this mentioned here? And it really doesn't have to do with rodef and yerdaf. But perhaps the reason why they mention it, even if you go with the approach, this really only has to do with someone being pursued and it has nothing to do with saving someone from a sin. We are going to see two opinions later that include some of the things from this list and think you can stop someone from doing it. And that's going to be Rabbi Shimon, Yochai, and his son, and we're going to talk about it when we get there. So the Gemara starts off quoting a Braita, which is very classic. We have a halacha in the Mishna, but the Braita wants to get at what's the source for this? Where does it come from in the Torah? And it's typical for what we call a midrash halacha, which basically tries to, those are Tannaitic sources, that instead of the Mishnah just saying this is what you do, the Tannaitic sources here, the midrash halacha, try to connect it to the psukim. So Tana Rabbanan, minayin lerodef achar chavero shenitam latzilo b'nafsho. So now they're going to say, how do we know? What's the source for this? And now we're going to end up bringing three different sources because the first two will be rejected. Talmud Lamal, lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. It says in the pasuk, don't stand idly while someone else is dying, right? Don't stand on your friend's blood. Okay, don't stand by while your friend's dying and don't do anything about it. And that would say, okay, so if someone, now I want to point out one thing before we go on. They're asking specifically about someone who's chasing someone to kill them. They're not asking about the Nara Murasa, which we're going to get to soon. So how do we know if you're chasing after someone to kill them that we can kill you? Well, it says, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, don't stand by while your friend is being killed. Go do something about it. But the Gemara says, wait a minute. How could you say this pasuk, Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa, is coming to teach us that? We need that pasuk for something else. How do you know if you see your friend drowning in the water in a river, or there's an animal dragging it to eat it, or there's robbers that are coming with a gun, or sword, going to kill them? How do you know you need to save your friend? Now, listim ba'imalav is a good question because that really is very similar. Didn't think about that till now, but I guess, yeah, good question what that would be. I guess that's the same thing, but it's a little, yeah. No, right. That's just saying you have to save the person. It doesn't mean you have to kill the listim. That's why it's different. Shu chayav latzilo. How do you know that you have to try to save this person? You can't just say, oh, I'll just mind my own business and this is going on. This reminds me in high school, we had to read some article. It was an article. I can't remember what the purpose of I think maybe we read like 4 different articles about the same case. And it was a case of a woman who was screaming in her house and everyone stood by ignoring her and nobody helped, right? And that's just not acceptable, right? Something was obviously terrible was happening. I don't remember in the end if she died or not. Really don't remember the details, but just thought about it right now that you can't just stand by and don't do anything. You're living in a society. You have to care about other people. And that's what we learned from Lo Ta'amod al dam re'echa. So that's just saying not that there's someone pursuing them or that you have to kill the person that you're allowed to kill the person who's pursuing them. But Lo Ta'amod al dam re'echa means, you have to save a person from drowning, from whatever it might be. So the Gemara says, you're right. Lo Ta'amod al dam re'echa can't be the pasuk. Ela nitan latzilo b'nafsho minayin. So where do we learn it from? We're going to learn it from Nara Murasa from a kavachon. Now, we don't yet know where we know Nara Murasa from, but let's just assume. Nara Murasa you can save, and we know this somehow. We'll get to it soon. We know that Nara Murasa you're allowed to kill the rapist. So how do we know to murder also? If someone's chasing someone to murder, well, kavachomer from Nara Murasa. Why is it a kavachomer? Well, ma Nara Murasa shelo ba ela lepagma. Amra Torah nitan latzilo b'nafsho. Rape, it's only that he is putting a pagam on her. And this is a key issue we're going to see. And again, you have to try to think about it. Ron and I might be a little bit different. But what he's doing is he's basically taking a woman who is a virgin and she's betrothed to someone else. And now he's kind of making something bad happen to her because now she's no longer a virgin. And she was raped. And it's a big stigma. I think stigma would be a good word. There's a stigma on her. And in their society, much more so even than in our society. And Yet, even though it's only a pagam, meaning her life is not in danger, although we will see a different approach later. But according to this, her life is not in danger. And now, however bad you think rape is, right? One could claim rape is worse than death. Could be. Okay. They're taking a stand. No. We think rape is not necessarily worse than death. We put it in a kal vachomer. And yet, you can still kill. So now they're not really saying rape is not so significant. It's obviously significant because you can kill the rapist. And so therefore, rodef. So the more so if someone's trying to kill someone, of course you'd be able to kill them. To which the Gemara says, wait a minute. And here we're the first place where we see that they clearly view this as you are instituting a punishment by killing this person. It's not just you're saving someone, but you're actually punishing the person who's doing it. So now they say there is no such thing that we can't learn a punishment from din. What's din? Kal vachomer. We can't derive something from kal vachomer because we all know that kal vachomer logic is sometimes could go the opposite way. You could play around with kal vachomer logic, and it's a little bit problematic logic sometimes, or it could lead you to all sorts of places that aren't necessarily true, and therefore you're not allowed to learn a punishment from a kal vachomer. So that can't be our source. So third source, debate Rabbi Tana. So Rabbi had a braita in his house, his Beit Midrash, that said hekeish. It's a hekeish. Now a hekeish is two things are juxtaposed in the pasuk. And when you learn one from the other, you can actually get to a punishment from that. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to say, and we are going to learn it from the Nara Murasa, but in a different way. It says, I'm going to read from the beginning of the pasuk, and we're going to darshan this pasuk a lot today. La nara lo taseh davar. Okay, this is if the Nara Murasa was raped and she wasn't a willing partner, but she was really raped. We don't do anything to her. Ein l'nara chet mavet. She doesn't get an onesh of a death penalty. Now, those two things basically say the same thing. We don't do anything to her, and she doesn't get the death penalty because why would she have gotten the death penalty? Well, she engaged in relations while she was betrothed to someone with someone else. But of course, she was raped. She doesn't get the death penalty. And then it says, she's basically a victim, just like someone gets murdered as a victim, someone who gets raped is a victim. I want to point out, if a minute ago we said that her din is more kal than murder, than a murder case, here it sounds like no, they're equal. The Torah is actually equating them, which I think is really interesting. The Torah is saying a woman being raped is like being murdered, and views it as a very serious offense. So now they say the following. Now, what they're basically saying is we're going to learn to this law that she's exempt from the murderer. Just like a murderer isn't liable, they were forced into it. Also, this woman is not liable. But they already taught you that. They already said, she doesn't have mishpah ma'aved. What do you gain by making this comparison? Really nothing. So, to which they say, right, that's what it says, it's as if it's coming to teach you something, but it was already taught. So therefore, it must be coming for something. What's it coming for? Well, let's do the reverse. Instead of saying the Naram or Asa is like a person who's murdered, let's say the opposite. Makish rotzeach l'naram or Asa. Let's say that rotzeach is like Naram or Asa. In what way? Exactly this way. Ma naram or Asa nitan latzila b'nafsho, just like you can save her by killing the rapist. Af rotzeach nitan latzila b'nafsho. Also a murderer, you can save by killing, right? Also, a person who's about to be murdered, you could say by killing the murderer. Okay, so that's our source. And now that we have to go back and say, okay, you've got me, but who's got you? We learn it from Naram Rasa, but where do we get Naram Rasa from? Naram Rasa gufa minalan. Keditana debe Rabbi Ishmael. As it says in the house of Rabbi Ishmael, he had a braita that said, Ditana debe Rabbi Ishmael ve'ein moshiala. It says in the pasuk, and she has no one to save her, which seems to indicate. Right here we're talking about Vanara, Kibas Ademitza, because she was in the field. Tza'aka, she screamed, Hanara Murasa, ve'ein Moshiach, and there was no one to save her, which sounds like if there was someone to save her, Hayesh la Moshiach b'chol davar she'echol hashia. If there was someone who could save her, that person could save her in any way they could have saved her, which means even to kill. And that's what we learn the din from Nara Murasa, really from the text of the Torah. Now we're going to stop for a minute and go back to something we mentioned in the first answer. The first answer we rejected because we said Lo Talmud Damar Echa is really coming for a different halacha. And now we're going to go in depth, and it's a fascinating halacha because really it raises a lot of issues that are very contemporary. You see someone who's drowning, or an animal is about to attack them, or the steam by imalav, you have to save your friend if you see someone, in this situation, you can't just stand by idly. Talmud lamar lo tamod al damar echa, don't stand on your friend's blood, right? Your friend's about to die, you have to save them. So now the Gemara says, wait a minute, and we're so obvious to us, we learn it from that pasuk, but the Gemara says, v'hamehacha nafka, you learn it from that pasuk, v'mehatam nafka, we really learn it from somewhere else. And this is a strange place to learn it, but when it talks about returning lost items, the Gemara asks about those psukim, avedat gufo minalan, how do we know as part of returning lost items is returning someone's body, meaning not returning a lost body, a dead body, we're talking about returning someone's body to them, meaning someone who's about to die, returning them their body. That means saving them. Where do we learn that from? Actually, from the psukim of Hashavat Avedah, returning lost items, Talmud Lamal, Vashevotolo. The psukim there say, you find a lost item, Hashev Teshivim, I think it says, you have to return it to your friend, Shev Teshivim. And then it says in the next pasuk, Vashevotolo, you have to return it to him. But we already said you have to return it. So what's this coming to teach you? It's coming to teach you Avedah Gufo, not just their property. And it's also kind of obvious. If you have to return property, of course you have to return the person's body if you can save them. So do we learn from there? Do we learn it from Lo Tamad Lo Damar Echa? How can we learn it from both places? So the Gemara says, well, we do learn it from Hashavat Avedah, but we also learn from Lo Tamad Lo Damar Echa. What does Lo Tamad Lo Damar Echa add? If you learned it just from returning lost items, that would mean you have to do it yourself in a case where you're capable. Let's say someone's drowning and you can't swim. So you could say, okay, I'm not obligated, right? I'm only obligated to return things that I find or that I can take, but not things that I can't, because I can't, there's like Kohen and Beit HaKvarot, for example. Kohen can't go into a cemetery, so they don't have to return it. So, it's a little different, but if I can't swim, so I don't have to save you. But maybe I don't have to, try really hard to do it or to hire people. Like maybe I have to go find someone to hire. So you wouldn't have to do that if you just had the pasuk vashevotalo. Lo tamod dam re'echa means you have to do everything at your disposal. You can't save them? Great. Go find someone who can. Pay them money if you have to. This raises fascinating questions. Okay, so before we get to that, let's just finish. Kamash malan. That's what lo tamod dam re'echa teaches us, that you have to do that. What kind of fascinating questions come out of here? So number one, you could ask the question, well, who pays? If I have to pay, can I demand the money back from you later? After I save you from drowning, can I say, pay me the money back? So there's a whole debate, and you're not really supposed to save someone with your own money. So you really can't demand the money. What if they don't have the money? All sorts of questions are asked about this. What if, and this is unfortunately a very relevant question in time of war, or not even time of war, but could happen not in war, but when in a soldier situation, which is, now we just see this all the time. What does a soldier have to save another soldier at the risk of risking their life? That's a whole other thing that really theoretically comes at us. What does it mean, lo tamod al dam re'echa? How far do we take that? Do you have to risk your life to do it? And there's lots of tshuvas about this. It's a very fascinating topic. Okay, there's a lot more here, but we're going to move on. Now we're going to quote a Braita that expands on the Mishnah. Doesn't disagree with it, just expands. Tanu Rabbanit, rodef achar chavero la'orgo. If you're chasing, someone's chasing their friend to kill them. Achar zachor, chanara murasa. Again, the cases we talked about before, after someone trying to rape either a man or a woman. Ve'achar chayeve mito beitin. Achar chayeve klitud. Okay, and also, if someone's chasing someone who wants to rape someone who is, let's say, their sister, or someone who there's a chiyuv karet, or a married woman, or a nida. Okay, it could be a non-married woman who's never gone to the mikveh and has her period already, so she'll be also. Right, that already includes many more cases. And so either we're going to see either chayve mito beitin or chayve kritud. Okay, there's different arayot. Some are karet, some are mita beitin. Right, karet is in the hands of God. Mita beitin is the beitin imposed death. All those you can kill the person who is the pursuer. But if it's a case where it's a widow who's being chased to be raped by a Kohen Gadol, that's just an Isur Lav, or a Grusha and a Chalutza to a regular Kohen. That's a lo taseh. Doesn't have karet or death penalty associated with it. And those people aim at show because the sin is less severe. So we have again what it's doing to the woman maybe is less severe, and also the sin itself is less severe. Okay, so there's this interplay again between the severity of the sin and the ramifications for the the one who's being pursued. Again, that goes back to that first question. Who are we saving from who? Okay. But both of those seem to be issues here. Yesh la Moshia, let's say she has someone who can save her without killing the person. Ein mitzilin, oh, sorry, I skipped one line. Ne'evda ba'avera, if a sin happened to her, meaning she was already raped before. This is a little hard to swallow, this case, but she was already raped and now she's being raped a second time. We can't kill the pursuer. Why? Right? Ein mitzilin otav nafsho, because she already had the pgam. And once you already were raped once and lost your virginity, that's really the big issue here with the nara murasa anyway. Once the pgam happened, and again, in different cases, the pgam might be different, but once that happens, the second time it's not really pgam anymore because you're already what we call pguma. It's happened to you. Hard to fathom because, I think we would view rape, any case of rape is quite severe, but they seem to be very hung up on the pgam issue. That was a big deal in their day, the stigma associated with it. And once it happened to you once, you're already in that category. So it's not to have it happen again is not going to make it that much worse. Again, this isn't an easy Gemara to learn because we don't really view rape in that way. We view it as a horrible thing, no matter what and who and where and when, and it doesn't make a difference. Now the Gemara says, Yesh la Moshia, if there's some other way to save the woman by, let's say, shooting him in the leg and he'll stop, then we don't do it by killing. Okay, if there's some other way to do it, then we don't kill the person. Rabbi Yehuda Omiel. Here comes Rabbi Yehuda with a different approach, and we'll talk about this on Amud Bet. We'll get into what's the machloka between Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis. If she says, listen, I'd rather just get raped and don't kill them, what's she really worried about? She's worried that if they try to kill him and they start chasing him, maybe he'll kill her. This happens, right? You see it in movies, I would say more so than in real life, although it does, I imagine, happens in real life. I'm just not usually privy to those kind of situations, but someone will hold up the person who they're chasing at gunpoint and say, oh, you want to kill me? Fine, I'll kill this person. So she's worried that she's going to get killed and she'd rather just surrender to the rapist and be raped and not get killed. If she says that, then we don't kill him either because we go with what the woman said. Now, again, what exactly his approach is based on, we're going to see in the Gemara. Now we want to know, where do we get all this from? So we finished the Braita, now we want to know what's the source for all these cases. Amar Kra, what we're really getting at is the four cases in the beginning. The Nara, the Zachor, Nara Murasa, the two rape cases, and Chayve Bito Beitin and Chayve Kritrut, okay, which are also the rape cases that all are the other two categories. So now they say, well, Amar Kra, L'Nara lo taseh davar ein l'Nara chet mavet. We already said that is really an unnecessary phrase, the second one, because it already said we don't do anything to the girl. And then we say, and the girl doesn't get mishpat chet mavet. She doesn't get, a sin of death. So that whole second part is unnecessary. We already said we don't do anything to her. What is that if not? She doesn't get killed. Na'ar, and the other thing is, if you look in the text of the Torah, it's written without a hey. Na'ara is spelled as na'ar. We already learned about aim la mikra, aim la masoret, right? There's two different ways. There's the way it's written. There's the way the tradition has it generally said. So, right, remember, aim la mikra is the tradition of how we read it, and aim la masoret is the tradition of how it's written. Okay, how it's written in the Torah. So now there's a whole. Na'ara zo na'ara murasa. We can darshan it both ways. We could say na'ar, the way it's written, says male. So that's someone who's raping a man. And na'ara zo na'ara murasa, that's someone who's chasing a woman, who's the na'ara murasa. Chet elu chayve klitud. Mavet elu chayve mitopetin. So the chet, mavet, also chet, usually karet is associated with chet because you bring a korban chatat if you do something that you're liable karet. So chet relates to karet-related issues, and mavet, it sounds exactly like what it is, death penalty. So now the Gemara says, Kol hanei lamali. Why do you need to darshan all four things? Sricha, you need it. Why? You might have thought, well, na'ar is very atypical. And it's generally, the general way of having relations is the regular way of having relations, like a male and a female would have relations. But homosexual relations are more atypical. Because they're more atypical, you might think that it's much worse for a man who's raped because someone engaged with him in sexual relations that were atypical, and that's embarrassing. So you might have thought that's greater. Aval nara, and therefore, if you had that case and not the nara, then you would say, Nara de orcha emalo. But that at least, now it's terrible. She was raped, but you might have thought, again, this is all just what you might have thought. It's not true. You might have thought maybe it's not as bad. And therefore, the embarrassment to her, and therefore maybe you wouldn't be able to save her by killing him. On the other hand, you could say the flip. If it just had the woman, you would say, well, she lost her virginity, right? She was a virgin. She was betrothed to someone with a man with homosexual relations. It wasn't the case, right? There's no virginity by a man. It's not the same issue. Turning out on a bed. If you had those two cases, you might have thought, Mishum now, going back to the two things we just said. For him, it's atypical. For the girl, it's a begam, right? Again, however you define this begam, but losing your virginity is a big, stigma. But you might have said all the other arayot that are happen in a more natural way. Not natural, it's hard to say that, but it's more typical way of having relations. There's no ruining the virginity of the woman. You might say no. And therefore, and that's why you had to say no. It's just as bad. In other words, this goes into the same category because of the word chet. Now, so why did you need mavet once you have chet? Chet could be anything that has the death penalty associated with it, whether it's karet or nitapit. Well, once they add the word mavet, it teaches you chet and mavet, yes, but something else, no, means chet is karet, mavet is mitopetin, not chayve lavim, like the almanah, the kohen gadol, the grusha and chalutza, the divorcee, and the one who went through chalitza to a regular kohen. Those cases, again, we don't stop the kohen who's pursuing these women. What if we just started with mavet? You might have thought, especially if we're saying that you're functioning as the court, maybe it's only cases where the court institutes the punishment and not cases where it's a God-given punishment. So that's why you need all four things, in order to teach you, right, all those things. Now they say one last question here. You could have said chet mavet, and you don't need nar and nara because they're part of the chayve mitopetin. So you wouldn't need them to be listed separately. Why are they listed separately? To which the Gemara says, inachinami, you're right. Put up my hands. Okay, I got to change something here. So in the end, we're going to say chet and mavet. Chet chayve kritut, mavet mitopetin. What about nar and nara? What do we do with them? We don't need them for nara morsan zachor because they're included in the other category of the mavet. So ela nar nara, what do we need them for? Now we're going to say they're not coming to include, they're coming to exclude. One is to say, and now we go back to our Mishna, there's three exclusions, and we're going to learn them from those two words. Okay, it's a little weird. You might think better, right? One word, each word excludes something else, but we're going to say, no, one word excludes avodah zarah, and the other word, chad, right? The fact that it's written as nar excludes avodah zarah. The fact that we read it as nara excludes behema, chad l'miute behema v'shabbat. Someone pursuing an animal and someone who's going to the Chalel Shabbat to desecrate the Sabbath. And those people you don't save, and that's why it says, specifically nar and nara, to teach you those are not saved. Now the Gemara says, okay, wait, now we're going to get to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai and Rabbi Elazar who have different opinions. So according to Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, da amar oved avodah zarah nitan latzilo b'nafsho. Now we're learning. What does Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai say? If someone's about to worship avodah zarah, idols, you can stop them. You can kill them to prevent them from doing that terrible sin. It's a fascinating concept about killing someone before they actually do a sin, okay, and how we can, do that. They're basically saying much worse if a person worships idols, even like in the afterlife, and therefore you can actually kill them to prevent them from doing that. So what's he going to say here? Because then we don't have one to exclude avodah zarah and the other to exclude the animal and Shabbos. So Shabbat. Okay, that's pretty easy. One is we're still left with two. So one is for the animal and one is for Shabbat. You might have thought, now why do you need this? Because you might have thought, Titi Shabbat, chilu chilu me'avodah zarah. You can make Xera Shabbat. The same word appears by Shabbat. It says at the end of Shemot, if you desecrate the Sabbath, you will die. And it says in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 18, by avodah zarah, v'lo techalel Hashem Elohecha. So chilul is mentioned by avodah zarah. It's mentioned by Shabbat. You might have thought if Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says avodah zarah, you could stop someone, maybe also Shabbat. That's why he needs nar and nara, one to exclude Shabbat, one to exclude animals. Now, right, again, one pursuing an animal to engage in bestiality. Now they say, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, da amar mechalel et Shabbat nitan latzilo b'nafsho. What about Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai's son? His son, now I want to just remind you, him and his son, they were in a cave for many years. When they came out, remember, they burned everybody and they couldn't handle seeing people sin, and they had to go back into the cave and kind of right, like calm down a little bit. But they were in general zealous people, and they had no tolerance for people who sinned. And it makes a lot of sense that they are of the opinion that you can kill someone who's doing a sin, because they were so zealous against people doing sins that kind of fit in. So Rabbi Shimon Yochai limited to avodah zarah. His son extended it even more, not just avodah zarah, but also chilul Shabbat. Where did he get that from? Well, obviously, Shabbat, what we just said, there's a Gzeira Shava between them. So he does learn that Gzeira Shava, even though his father didn't. So again, now here we're a little stuck, because we have two words, nar, nara, and now we have to learn only one exception, the behemah. So what are we going to say? Well, chad miut lemiute behemah. Okay, one will go to exclude the animal. V'idach, what about the other one? Okay, we don't really need to learn anything from that. I did the katav rachman nar, katav nami nara. This really means is they wrote it as nar to teach you something that excludes someone who's chasing after an animal, and that actually is good drasha. A nar, but not an animal. Right? One who's pursuing, somebody to rape them, but not a person, not a human, not an animal. And then it's just read as nara because that's the context it's talking about, a nara murasa, betrothed woman. So we read it that way just because that's what it is. But the nara part comes for the drasha. Okay, so now that was all. Where do we get those? Were drashot for where do we get all the rules for who can we save benafsho, latzil benafsho, and who can't? Okay, and where we get it from the psukim, and how we deal with these other two alternative opinions of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son. I think I might have said Rabbi Shimon Elazar before. Anyway, if I did, I'm sorry. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Now we have two more things left to do. The second to last one is the one we're at right now. Rabbi Yehuda Omer. We have to go back to Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishna, who said, "Afa Omer hanichulo." Sorry, in the Braita, "Afa Omer hanichulo shelo yahargena." Even the one who says, "Leave him," right, and I don't want him to kill me. We leave him. Okay, we don't kill him. We don't try to kill him so that he won't kill her. And that's what she wanted. Now the rabbis say, yes, we do kill him anyway. So what's the machloket, and what case really is there debate? So, but my kamiflaget, Gemara says, what's their machloket about? In which case, and what's the machloket? Amar Rava b'makpedet al pigma umanichato shelo yahargena. Rava said it's a case where the woman does care. She doesn't want to get raped. It's not like she's like, okay, I don't mind getting raped. Again, nobody would want to get raped. But the point is, she cares about the pekam. She doesn't want to lose her virginity. She doesn't want to have this stigma on her, which I would assume most people are like that, maybe even everyone. But the point is, it's not like she says, okay, I don't care to get raped because I don't want to get killed, but I don't really care about the rape. No, she obviously cares about being raped. And she's just saying, leave him though, shelo yahargena, so he won't kill me. So Rabbanan Savre, so what do the rabbis hold? Apigma kapi rachmanav harei makpeded apigma. What was the whole reason the Torah said you could kill this man? Because he's going to cause her this stigma. And whether it doesn't matter what she says, oh, please don't kill him so he won't kill me. But we care, she cares about the stigma, and the Torah cares about the stigma. So as long as she cares about it and isn't willing to say, I really don't care, since she cares about it, we actually do kill him because that's still in line with the Torah law. And Rabbi Yehuda is totally, and this is why I mentioned earlier, we're going to see a totally different approach to this whole thing. It's not, according to Rabbi Yehuda, all about the pagam. No. Rabbi Yehuda says, Hai de ka'amar, Rachmana katle, mishum de masra nafsha l'ktala. She is willing to get killed. Most women who are getting raped, and this is a good question, okay, but we're assuming the average woman who wants to get raped is going to fight her rapist, even to the death, right? Even if it ends up getting her killed, she'll do anything not to get raped. And therefore, now Rashi says we're talking about snuot that really so don't want to get raped, but you got to assume that it's most women are in this category, and they're going to fight and even willing to die rather than to get raped. Whether this is true or not, I can't tell you. This is the Rabbi Yehuda's approach. Now, lo masra nafsha l'kadla, but this woman said, leave him, don't do anything because I don't want to get killed. She's saying, I'd rather get raped than get killed. Now, it doesn't mean she wants to get raped. She, of course, doesn't want to get raped. She's makpedet al pigma. But she's not willing to she doesn't want to give her life to get, right? She's willing to just surrender, and then her life is not in danger. According to Rabbi Yehuda, what comes out of here is anyone who's getting raped, their life is in danger. And this fits in, by the way, with the fact that we say rape is can't think of my words, but rape, an act of violence. Okay, rape is an act of violence. It's not an act of a sexual act or anything. It's an act of violence, which means the person could very easily kill her, and she could end up dead. So that's why we kill the rapist, according to Rabbi Yehuda, because he might kill her. Now, in a case where she surrenders and says, "Listen, don't kill me. Just I'll do whatever you want," then we don't kill him anymore because it's not like he's going to kill her, and that's very different than what we thought of until now. Okay, because Rabbi Yehuda has a different, unique opinion. Amarle Rav Papa Labai. Rav Papa now questions Abai and says, "Wait a minute. Almana leKohen Gadol nami kapagimla." But Almana leKohen Gadol also there's a pagam because she's a halala. So she now can't marry any Kohen. She has a stigma on her that she's called a halala. So if you're saying it's all about the pagam and it's not about death or anything, then why should we save her? So Amalei pig maraba kapi rachmana pig bazuta lo kapi rachmana. According to the rabbis, if it's a serious, like there's range of pagam. So to lose your virginity when you're an aram or a betrothed woman, that's really bad. And almanado kohen gadolu now becomes halal. Okay, it means she can't marry a kohen, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. Okay, we're going to end with chet elu chai bekritut. So the Mishna, the Braita had said, chet is right includes chai bekritut. That again, mitzilino tam nafsham. You can kill someone who's pursuing someone. That means if we go back to saying this is a punishment, that means that if somehow you incur a payment through this action, you won't have to pay because anytime you do an action, we learned already, kim lebe de rabbanit, we're always going to take the more severe punishment, right? And not the monetary payment. But Uraminu, this contradicts the following Mishna in Ketubot. Ve'elu narot sheyesh lem knas. These are narot that have knas. If somebody rapes them, they get paid this knas that the Torah says for rapists has relations with a woman, right? And she's an unmarried woman, he pays a knas. Haba'al achoto. So what if he has relations with his sister? And that's chiyuv karet. He's going to have to pay the knas. So now, amur Rabbanan kamed Rav Chisda. So what's the problem? Well, if it's a ba'al achoto and it's chiyuv karet, and then we're allowed to basically kill him, it means he's liable to the death penalty for it. But according to this, he actually has to pay a monetary payment. So we're going to have a series of answers, 3 today and more tomorrow, in the Shabbat stuff. The rabbi said before, from the moment he starts penetrating, but not yet fully in, already at that moment, he already does the pagam, which means that at that moment, he can't be killed anymore because the damage is done. And therefore, there's no prevention of damage. This is all to prevent damage. Once the damage is prevented, well, then you can't kill him anymore. Then you have to bring him to court on what he did. But the monetary payment is only once he completes the action of having relations with her. So, because of that, they happen at different times. If they happen at different times, then you can end up with 2 punishments on you. Okay, now the rabbi said this for Chisda. Now they say this only works if you hold ha'ara'ah zon shika. No. What they said is from shat ha'ara'ah, which we think means he started entering, then that's when the pagam happens. But that's only if you think ha'ara'ah is nishika, which means a kiss. Okay, literally it means kiss. What it means is when he just starts going in, when his sexual organ touches her body, starting to go in. But if you say the hara'ah is actually going in completely, then what how can you explain this? So that doesn't work. Rav Chisda, the rabbis brought this for Rav Chisda, and Rav Chisda said doesn't work according to one opinion, right? This is all a machloket we saw previously. So now we say the following. Right, I said wait a second. Yeah. Okay. So now we say, El Amar Rav Chisda kigon sheba aleha shelo kedarka v'chazar uba aleha kedarka. So now they say, oh wait, we can come up with a different case. First, you have relations with her in an atypical manner, which is usually considered anal intercourse. That doesn't cause a pagam. I'm sorry, that already caused the pagam. Sorry, that's already caused the pagam, but it's not considered in the case of the knas. The knas is only when it's bi'akid arka, and therefore it doesn't happen at the same time. By the way, the Rashi even says it could be someone else already had bia shalokadarka, where she was already pguma, she already had the stigma because she was already raped before, but again, raped in a way that it didn't, right, that now he's not going to incur, you're not going to be able to latzilo b'nafsho, That's not there, and that's why there's going to be a knas. And that's how they explain the Mishnah in Ketubot. Third answer, Rav Amar b'minichato shelo yahargena v'Rabbi Yehudahi. Maybe this Mishnah is only Rabbi Yehuda's opinion, which is in a case where, and the case would have to be a case where she says, please leave him and don't kill him. And that way there's going to be a knas, a penalty of money, because there is no way to kill him, because she says, don't kill him. And again, that's only Rabbi Yehuda's position. Okay, so what did we do? A lot of information in today's stuff. We went through the list of who is a rodef, basically, that we can kill, which cases are included, which cases aren't included. We saw different opinions. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and his son also had different opinions about this, where we draw the line. We also had a bright that expanded on the Mishnah, and then we went into, number one, what's the source that if someone's murdering someone, we can stop them by killing them. We brought 3 different sources, and the third one was the only one that lasted. We had an aside about how do we know you have to save someone? Where does that come from? Then we went back to the Braita that had more detail of the Mishnah. And then from there, we got into what are the sources for all the different 4 categories in the Mishnah that they discuss. The Zachar and the Nara Murasa, the Chayve Krito, Chayve Mito Beitin. Then we ended up saying, oh no, the Nara actually come to exclude the opinions, of like all the other things to exclude, not to include. And then we got off on Rabbi Yehuda and what his unique position is. Now he has a whole different approach to the issue in general. And then we ended with this contradiction between the Braita, something inside the Braita, and because of the laws of Kimle and this Mishnah in Ketubot. And we had 3 answers, and we'll come back to that in the next class and discuss some other possible answers. Wishing everybody Shabbat Shalom.